Hello and welcome to Reimagining Cyber. My name is Ben, producer of the show, and with me I have one of our resident experts, threat research analyst Tyler Moffitt. Tyler, how are you doing?
Doing well, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
Marvellous. Now, today we're talking about cryptocurrency. It started as a tool for financial freedom. Criminals quickly saw its potential for anonymous transactions, and in this episode we're going to trace how Bitcoin evolved from a libertarian experiment to the backbone of cybercrime, but we will also be looking at other crypto as well. But before we really get into the weeds, if you like, Tyler, this is one of your passions. I know before we kind of introduced you into the whole reimagining cyber fold, this was one of the key topics you wanted to talk about. What made you so passionate, enthusiastic about this topic?
So yeah, I've been following crypto for a long time. I essentially was building a computer just as I normally would, and I noticed on the website I was using, Newegg, that there people who were buying this graphics card were buying a whole bunch of this type of equipment called a USB riser. And I had no idea what it was, so I clicked on it and followed down the rabbit hole and eventually stumbled across people building mining rigs and was like, why are they doing this? And so then I looked up to see that they were using it to mine cryptocurrency and earn money from it. And I was like, I know how to do this. And so I was skeptical and didn't necessarily want to even get in into investing and buying crypto myself with money because I didn't believe it too. I was like, magic internet money. I'm throwing real dollars down for this fake money. What is this? And so I built a mining rig to begin with, and then saw how it all worked from the network level of mining, and then that's how I got it all stemmed from basically building my first mining rig.
First of all, then, how do we get from this digital libertarian dream to crypto being the getaway car for cybercrime?
Well, it's been a long journey, but the initial stage is obviously Bitcoin being created. And Bitcoin, obviously, everyone on this podcast has heard of Bitcoin, right? It's a cryptocurrency, it's a digital asset, it's designed to work as a medium of exchange that uses cryptography to control its creation and management rather than relying on central authorities like banks and governments. And that's the important part there is the trusted third parties, if you will, that we've always had to rely on when it comes to currency, fiat money, is thrown out the window. So with Bitcoin, cryptocurrency in general, most blockchain tech, right? You only your ledger system is for the most parts with proof of work systems, the miners, right? You've heard of Bitcoin mining. That's why people are mining. People are mining not only to secure the network, but they're trying to earn Bitcoin from it. They are rewarded with Bitcoin every 10 minutes. A block is solved, and like 3.125 Bitcoin is released into circulation every 10 minutes. And that ledger system, which is not centralized, no bank, no centralized issuer or anybody you can go to for a refund or say I didn't mean to send those coins or whatever. That's it's all it's all automated and decentralized in the Bitcoin network, and that is where criminals are able to flourish from the fact that you cannot stop a transaction ever. There's nobody. There's no like so when it comes down to like dollars, when you converse it, right? The Swift system, if you have like a terrorist organization trying to send a whole bunch of money somewhere, big government can come in and then stop it immediately, right? Freeze those assets. You cannot do that with crypto. It's not possible. The only way to possibly do that would be to hack 51% of all miners in real time and say, you didn't send those addresses to X address, you sent it to Y address. And as the way the system is built right now and how strong it is and decentralized it is and how you know, there's no mining pool or government that has even close to 51%. China had the most back in like 2020, 2019, 2018. They had about 23%. And then they banned Bitcoin at the time. And so nobody's even close as far as receiving that. So long-winded explanation, but basically nobody can stop it. The transactions are final and there's no central authority to govern, refund, stop the system. It will keep going. There's no way to stop it.
So Bitcoin was launched in 2009. Was there a moment, though, that you can pinpoint, I suppose, when it became clear that criminals were jumping on the Bitcoin bandwagon?
There's two big points we'll talk about. The first big one, the big moment you're talking about, I would say Silk Road. And I think most people have heard of Silk Road. It was launched in like 2011, so Bitcoin's only like, 2 years old at this point. It's not really worth much, but it doesn't matter. It's worth something, and the medium of exchange and sending Bitcoins works. And so Silk Road adopted Bitcoin as its native currency. And you essentially Silk Road was where you would go on the dark web and buy illicit things, whether it's weapons, fake IDs, drugs, you name it. Anything that governments would prevent you from coordinating and selling, you could go do on Silk Road, right? It was private, anonymous, massive, and I'm sure we all maybe recent news. Ross Ulbricht was the guy who created it. He just got released out of jail and pardoned, but he was in jail for like over 10 years when law enforcement shut it down. It didn't even last a couple of years. Law enforcement came in, the FBI shut it down. That would be the moment when I think everybody realized the utility. You have to show utility. And what's funny when we talk about this is when it comes to brand new, groundbreaking, paradigm shifting internet technology or just technology in general, the first people to pioneer it are criminals. That's pretty much how this stuff gets tested and utility proven is through criminals, and that's through all out history with technology. Warfare and criminals are the people who really test the metal of a new technology, proving its worth and utility.
You've told us, Tyler, then, of Silk Road, the first of the big key points. The second is ransomware, the biggest and the baddest of them all. And it started in 2013 when CryptoLocker came out.
That's the first like variant, if you will, of ransomware, where it's a payload that enters your system, encrypts your files, and demands payment. Right now, originally the payment was in Ucash or MoneyPack, which are actually these gift cards you'd go buy at Woolworths or Walmart or Target or whatever. But you could actually report those and then get the money refunded or confiscated back from the criminals. And they saw that and were like, whoa, this is a problem. And so that's when they adopted Bitcoin because they saw the utility. They saw the fact that it couldn't be confiscated, right? You can't stop the money being sent and then you can't confiscate it afterwards. So that's why Crypto Locker adopted Bitcoin very fast. And now all ransomware pretty much uses cryptocurrency for its payment, like for sure. And Bitcoin's on there. There are other ones like that. We'll also take Monero, which is very similar to Bitcoin. We can talk about that later. But basically, all of a sudden, huge paradigm shift. Bitcoin wasn't just for darknet markets. It was like every single criminal's playbook is running ransomware and they're taking Bitcoin as payment. And you get paid instantly. And it's technically not anonymous, and we can go into details and explain the difference later. But as far as the purpose for what criminals are doing and how they launder it, it effectively is the most secure and anonymous way of receiving payments.
And WannaCry as well in 2017 was the cause of a global panic. Give me a bit of info about that.
Yeah, so WannaCry, funny enough, that was just combining ransomware with like state actor exploits that were previously hidden and only used by like, nation states like, FBI, CIA, combined with ransomware to move like a worm. And so that spread like wildfire through SMB, the server message block built into, every Windows PC, Windows XP and up. And that was massive and spread like crazy. I think it hit like, like a million PCs within 24 hours and then went worse from there. And we saw it like absolutely take over the whole world because it shut down so many different things. And it was actually done on a Ukrainian holiday and it was Russia attacking Ukraine. And while it did demand payments in Bitcoin, WannaCry never actually did anything if you did pay the money. If you paid the money, it was a pure donation. That was the first time I would call that destructionware. It was purely state attacks on Russia, on Ukraine to shut down Ukrainian infrastructure. In fact, the ground zero for WannaCry was an infected update for me.doc, which is attack software specifically in Ukraine. And so it came in through a supply chain and then spread to the rest of the world, hitting so many different, manufacturing and supply chain therefore that like shut down tons of telecommunications, water plants. We saw like car manufacturers shipping over ocean, Maersk, like so many people were hit. It was just worldwide, right? And Microsoft even released an emergency patch for it. They never actually really ever do that to release an update for an end of life unsupported operating system. But it did demand payment in Bitcoin, but it didn't do anything. Its sole purpose. In fact, they analyzed the payload and they found that it actually destroyed the 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 encryption keys. They just dumped them straight from memory as soon as it encrypted. So its whole purpose was to be destructive.
Tyler, you teased us earlier on by saying that Bitcoin, contrary to popular belief, is not anonymous. Give me a bit more info about that, and also let me know about the alternatives out there.
Absolutely. And that's a good point to bring up. Everybody, I think, needs to learn and talk about it because when we talk about crypto, Bitcoin, criminals, people just think that you get paid in Bitcoin, that's anonymous, no one knows that's you. It's like, that's wrong. Every address that Bitcoin has is on the public ledger system. So when you send coins from X address to Y address, you can view that on a public blockchain explorer, right? And that's what you do. You watch it and you wait for block confirmations to make sure that those coins have been sent, and it's all good. And you can be doxxed by that way. That's how so many different criminals get caught. They launder their Bitcoin terribly. If you receive a ransom payment in Bitcoin and then you send it straight to Coinbase or Gemini or whatever on off platform you use to turn it into dollars, euros, rubles, pounds, whatever, you have to do what's called KYC or know your customer. And this is massive because this is how most of the criminals who do get caught in ransomware get caught is they essentially receive the ransom in Bitcoin and then they don't sort of launder it. They send it straight to the exchange, cash out for money. And then you can see because when you report to the FBI or Interpol or whoever that you were ransomed and you give them this transaction address or transaction, they can look and see where that coin's moved, see that it moved to an exchange, and then they subpoena the exchange. And then that exchange has all the details on the criminal. They give it to the policing entities, and then they go after and catch them. And so it really brings to light that Bitcoin is not anonymous. What solutions are there for criminals who want to be anonymous? And that's where Monero comes in. Okay. Monero's been around for quite a while. And Monero is basically a pseudo clone of Bitcoin, but instead it has no public ledger. Okay. It uses ring signatures, stealth addresses, and confidential transactions. So every transaction is obfuscated by default. It is 100% untraceable. They made it the go-to for if you wanted to make sure your tokens are fungible. Okay, meaning every single piece of Monero is indistinguishable from any other piece of Monero. You cannot say that for Bitcoin. There is something called dirty Bitcoin or like red flagged Bitcoin, where if you try to send that Bitcoin to anywhere, you may get in trouble because it's already been watched and be like, hey, look, that's been flagged and said it's been used for criminal activity. And if those coins move, then, the FBI is going to be subpoenaing things like that. And so that's where XMR came out. And it's been a go-to for criminals ever since it came through because of its privacy.
And listener, just in case you didn't know, XMR is the abbreviation for Monero. Tyler, it's not just Monero's untraceability that makes it unique, is it?
So one thing that's really important about Monero is their ASIC resistance algorithms. And what I mean by that is we all know that Bitcoin miners are like these machines that have chips in them that are meant and designed specifically to mine Bitcoin, right? That algorithm. A lot of the problems that when coins were invented, proof of work coins, is they picked a certain algorithm and there are chips made and designed purely to mine that. And then they take a huge market share of that coin when they come on the market. They can mine a whole bunch of those coins and sort of take over a monopoly of those coins. Monero wanted to address that by essentially changing the algorithm that they have for their coin regularly. So that way no one can develop a chip that would take monopoly over And so it's one of the best coins actually to mine using your generic CPU, if that makes sense. Like it's just as useful compared to like a GPU or an ASIC chip specifically developed for an algorithm like Bitcoin. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is criminals found a way to abuse that nature. And they have something came out that called cryptojacking. This came out like I'd say 6, 7 years ago, maybe the 2017, 2018, crypto pump. Really interesting and innovative way. What they did is they would essentially inject into a website, like you just visit a website. They would inject sort of a script into the website. You would visit it, and then it would sort of run a cryptojacking piece of malware. All it was is just using your CPU to mine Monero cryptocurrency for the criminal. And it wouldn't make much. I mean, it's just taking the CPU, whether it's on your laptop or your phone or your desktop, whatever it is, but it all adds up. Because if they hijack a website that has high traffic, and then they siphon off CPU cycles from everybody who's visiting, they can make so much money over a month, right? And then if they earn this crypto and then it appreciates in value as time goes on, and it's worth even more. And that was like one of the top types of malware we saw back in 2017. And then every 4 years we see it spike again. We're seeing it again this year as well because it's a bull run and people expect the prices of crypto to go up. And so, really interesting, we found a way for criminals to steal CPU cycles off of people's machines just visiting their browser. And then this downstream resulted in what is very popular today. One of the most common malware we see as far as actual payloads being delivered that's not ransomware. So as far as popular payloads that's not ransomware, it's called XMR rig. Its purpose is literally to go on a machine and then use as much resources to mine cryptocurrency for the criminals. And that's usually what happens. I mean, if you're a criminal and you breach into an environment or a network and you see that maybe there's not enough cash in the bank to pay a ransom, or that there's not enough valuable files on the machine to really get anything, and you feel like as a criminal, once you've cased the joint, that there's not much money to be made here, then you'll just drop XMR rig, where you're not after any files or ransom payment. You'll just steal as much money you can, dropping essentially this piece of malware that leverages all of the CPUs in the environment, mining you money, however many dollars a day, unnoticed until they notice it. And they're smart too, to where it'll use as much CPU as it can when everybody goes home for the day and work. But when you're using the computer, it'll only use like 20%. And so that way it's not going to bog down your machine and you go, what's going on? Why is my computer so slow? Why are the fans going up? Like they're really smart about it. And so that's wild. And that's like something we've essentially, since it came out, XMR rig has not gone away, and it's only been like one of the top pieces of malware that criminals leverage if they're not going to use ransomware.
I want to start wrapping things up if I can, talking about crypto's battle, its arms race, if you like, with law enforcement. Where do things stand at the moment?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's evolving. Agencies like FBI and Europol, they use these tools, these analytics tools, like chain analysis. And what they do is they try to trace Bitcoin transactions that I was telling you about earlier, how criminals get caught. They do that with these tools, talking about from the source where the victim buys Bitcoin to pay the payment. And then where does it go? Where does the Bitcoin travel? Where does it move throughout the criminals' hands? Do they try and launder it through decentralized exchanges? Do they go straight to the, KYC exchanges and exchange it for fiat and crypto, like actual dollars? It's definitely difficult, but chain analysis does a great job. Chain analysis was used and leveraged to analyze a lot of the Operation Kronos, which was when they had a big takedown of Lockbit, and they were able to sort of talk about how much money was made, how much damage was done. It's really good. But another good example is the Colonial Pipeline attack in 2021. The FBI tracked and recovered a big chunk of the ransom because Bitcoin was still sitting in traceable wallets that they were then able to confiscate the keys. Remember, they have to get a hold of the keys in order to unlock that Bitcoin, and they were able to get those keys, which basically means from the protocol standpoint, they are the verifiable owners, right? So, but with Monero though, it's a lot harder. Some exchanges, like I said, it's difficult. You have to use sketchy exchanges because most popular centralized exchanges that people trust and know about, they've delisted it due to pressure from these governments. But it's still very actively used underground.
So, given everything that we've covered, from Silk Road to ransomware to privacy coins, do you think crypto can ever really fully shake its association with crime, or is it, is it just part of its DNA?
That's a good question. Honestly, that's a tough one. We're into new territory with AI generated malware, right? It's off chain payment systems making it even harder to track. But crypto is only gaining more ground in the public arena. But it's usually the coins like Bitcoin and main ones that not only governments, but companies know and trust. But when it comes to these, you know, private decentralized public ledger untraceable coins, I do believe that they will be staples of the underground and they will keep innovating, and the real tension will be between privacy and enforcement. And crypto will kind of always live in that gray area, but we're going to have, the good parts and then also warnings of the bad parts.
Tyler, fantastic, fascinating stuff. As we said at the beginning of the show, this really is one of your passions.
Absolutely. I could talk for days on it. There's so much more stuff being innovated as time goes on. I mean, I've been in the space for such a long time, and it's great to see all the developments that they have, and I'm excited to see where we go. Even like every bull run, every 4 more years, I'm always excited to see where the industry takes us and the adoption in mainstream.
Wonderful, Tyler. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
And thanks to you for listening to Reimagining Cyber. We will be back next Wednesday. To make sure you get to listen to the episode as soon as it drops, do remember to subscribe or follow the show. Goodbye.